What would you do if your husband of 12 years broke up with you via text while you were helping a customer? It was a Thursday afternoon, warm and ordinary, the kind where nothing major is supposed to happen. I was standing behind the counter at my boutique in Austin helping Mrs. Peterson pick out a silk scarf for her niece. She smiled warmly as I wrapped it in our signature silver tissue, chatting about weekend plans. Then my phone buzzed. Between helping customers at your little shop, I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. Ha 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 ha. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't tremble. The only visible crack in my mask was a faint tightening at the corners of my eyes. I smiled at Mrs. Peterson as I handed her the wrapped package. "Let me know how she likes it," I said. She waved goodbye. The bell above the door chimed as it closed behind her. Then I picked up my phone and typed back 2 words, "Good luck." That was it. No drama, no breakdown, just clarity. Cold, sharp, and controlled. My name is Claire Harrison. I'm 38, the owner of a boutique I built from the ground up. And that text message, that was the day Mark thought he ended our marriage. But really, it was the day I began writing my own story. See, Mark assumed I'd crumble, that I'd sob in a corner and beg him to come back. But what he didn't know is that I'd been preparing for this for months. The signs had been impossible to ignore. The mysterious late nights that didn't match up with his pay stubs, the new gym membership, the sudden obsession with designer sneakers and slim-fit shirts on a man who'd mocked youth culture just last year. The clincher came 3 months ago. I found a receipt from an upscale steakhouse in downtown Austin, 2 entree, 2 drinks. That same night, he'd told me he was working late, so I opened a separate account under my name at a different bank. Quietly, deliberately. 1 week later, he suggested we combine all our finances to make things simpler. I smiled sweetly and said, "Of course." Then I moved every penny of my personal savings out of our shared account. The joint account, I left just enough in it to keep things looking normal, 2 months of deposits and predictable expenses. Mark thought he drained our safety net, but really he'd just stolen his own illusion. Then my phone buzzed again. "Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Melissa, 20 years old, the new receptionist at his office. I remembered her from the Christmas party, fake lashes, too loud laugh, a little too familiar with Mark, when she thought no one was watching. She was young enough to be his daughter and naive enough to think she was special. I didn't respond to that message either. Instead, I called my lawyer. Not a new lawyer, my lawyer. The one I'd met with 2 months ago when I found that hotel charge on our credit card statement. "It's time I said." "She finally made his move?" my lawyer asked calmly. "He did." "I'll file the papers first thing tomorrow," she said. "Do you want him served in Miami?" I smiled. "No rush. Let him think he's won first." Then came another gem. "I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you've got your little shop to keep you busy." I laughed, out loud. My little shop. The boutique that had been featured in 3 local fashion publications, that out-earned his middle management salary every quarter, that paid for the trips he bragged about at his office. He never understood it, never respected it. But that didn't matter anymore. Because while Mark packed for his fantasy life, I was gathering my evidence folder, the one with screenshots of suspicious credit card charges, late-night texts, and now this beautiful message where he practically confessed to theft and premeditated abandonment. My phone buzzed once more. "BTW, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect." I poured myself a glass of the wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Then I picked up the phone again. "Mrs. Harrison speaking," I told the credit card rep. "I need to report fraudulent charges." And just like that, the first-class flights and beachfront suite Mark had booked for his big romantic getaway canceled. His fantasy life detoured. The best part, he had no idea what was waiting for him when he landed. But the real shock was still to come. The night before their flight, Mark must have been riding high, probably strutting around Melissa's apartment like some victorious alpha thinking he'd pulled off the perfect exit. In his head, he'd delivered a clean break text, sent money taken girlfriend, secured life upgraded. But in reality, he'd just declared financial war, and I was already 10 steps ahead. As he packed his overpriced carry-on, my lawyer was finalizing the emergency filing. By the time he reached Miami, the court would already be reviewing his text messages, the ones where he openly admitted to draining our joint account and using shared credit cards to bankroll his romantic escape. My phone buzzed again. "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." I actually laughed. Our house, my house, had been in my name long before Mark entered the picture. I'd inherited it from my grandmother, and despite Mark's years of subtle pressure to add his name to the deed, I never caved. Something always told me to hold firm. Another buzz. And the boutique. "We can work out a fair payment for your half." My half. The boutique I built from scratch, while Mark belittled it as a hobby. The one I'd funded myself, managed myself, grown from a tiny Etsy page into a respected storefront in Central Austin, let him dream. I finished my wine, opened my laptop, and scanned through my growing documentation folder. Credit card statements, screenshots of texts, bank transfer receipts, even old voicemails where Mark mocked my control freak tendencies over money, something the court would find rather enlightening. Morning came with fury. Buzz, buzz, buzz. "What the hell did you do to the credit card the airline won't honor our tickets? Hotel says our reservation was canceled. Answer me, Claire." I didn't. Instead, I opened the boutique at 9 a.m. sharp, just like every Friday. A new shipment of designer handbags had arrived, luxury Italian leather limited edition. My assistant helped unpack them while I restocked the displays. Life doesn't stop just because someone throws a tantrum. Especially not when that someone is halfway across the country discovering that actions have consequences. Around noon, the phone rang. It was Barbara Mark's mother. "Claire, dear." She said, her voice dripping with concern. "Mark told us everything, about how controlling you've been. He says you're being vindictive now, interfering with his travel. He just wants to move on." I calmly put her on speaker while arranging our front window display. "Barbara," I said, smoothing out a silk scarf. "Did Mark mention draining our joint account and using our credit card to take his receptionist on a luxury trip?" Silence? "Well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been cold, distant. I have the texts I said plainly. Would you like me to read you the one where he mocked my age, or the one where he called my boutique a little shop, more silence?" "He did seem a bit cruel," she muttered. I told him that message was inappropriate. "I appreciate the call, Barbara, but my lawyers advised me to limit contact with Mark's family. The proceedings are already underway." "Proceedings? Yes. Goodbye, Barbara." I hung up. By late afternoon, word had spread like wildfire. Mark's sister Amanda posted a vague Facebook status about choosing the wrong side. Mutual friends were already whispering about how Mark and Melissa had ended up stuck at a budget motel near the airport. Apparently, after I canceled the cards, he tried using his personal ones, only to discover most were maxed out. Another red flag I'd noticed, but like always, he assumed I wasn't paying attention. My lawyer called. "We've got an emergency hearing scheduled for Monday," she said. "Given his admitted misuse of funds and the documentation you've provided, we're in a strong position to freeze the remaining assets." "Has he been served yet?" I asked. "Not yet, but we have a new address for him, thanks to his girlfriend's Instagram." I laughed. Melissa had been posting nonstop about their Freedom Adventure beach selfies, fruity cocktails, even one post mocking bitter exes in a now-deleted caption. Perfect. Public evidence of the affair plus their current location. By the way, my lawyer added she also posted a picture of Mark poolside captioned, "Best man ever." That should play nicely when we argue premeditation. My phone buzzed again. "You think you're smart, but I made copies of all your boutique's financial records. Half of it is mine." I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Let him believe that she said, He clearly doesn't understand how business incorporation works, especially when it's sole proprietorship with full documentation from before the marriage. I nodded. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or crying. It's being quiet, watching, planning, documenting. Mark had spent months constructing his fantasy of escape, convinced I was too naive, too dependent, too slow to notice. But he'd mistaken my silence for weakness. And now, with the law on my side and evidence mounting the story he thought he was writing, was crumbling beneath him. But he still hadn't seen the courtroom. And that would be his biggest surprise yet. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, though the AC was definitely on full blast, but in atmosphere. Clinical. Sterile. A place where drama becomes documentation and betrayal becomes evidence. Mark arrived 10 minutes late, of course, wearing a pair of designer jeans that clung too tightly to his midsection, a blazer 2 shades too bright, and the smug grin of a man who still thought he could charm his way out of accountability. Melissa wasn't by his side. She lingered in the hallway, flipping through her phone, visibly uncomfortable under the fluorescent lights. Her confidence from Instagram didn't seem to survive in person. Mark sauntered to his seat like it was a job interview, not a legal reckoning. My lawyer, impeccable as always, stood and began, with quiet confidence. Your Honor, we present documented evidence of financial misconduct, including text messages from Mr. Harrison admitting he emptied a joint account, committed unauthorized credit card use, and attempted to claim separate property without entitlement. She slid the first exhibit across the table, the text where Mark gleefully announced his departure, the drained account, and his parting gift, booking the trip with Melissa. Mark's lawyer, clearly assembled last minute, tried to respond. My client admits to some impulsive behavior, he began, but Mrs. Harrison's response has been unnecessarily vindictive, and calculating, my lawyer interrupted, is not the same as vindictive. My client protected her assets, maintained meticulous financial records, and refrained from emotional retaliation. That's not vindictiveness. That's intelligence. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes and no patience for theatrics, raised a hand to stop them. Let's be clear. Mr. Harrison, do you deny using the joint credit card to book travel with a third party? Mark shifted. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud, the judge asked. He flushed. It wasn't fraud. You're not a lawyer, Mr. Harrison, and this isn't a debate club. Then she turned to the next page in her file, the business records. Mrs. Harrison, can you confirm this boutique was established before the marriage? Yes, Your Honor, I replied. The LLC was filed in my name 6 months before we were married. I've kept the account's tax filings and profits completely separate from our personal finances. My lawyer added, in fact, Mr. Harrison routinely referred to it as her little hobby, as evidenced in the attached text messages. Mark's lawyer pushed again, but the business grew during their marriage. My client should be entitled to a portion of its value. The judge didn't even blink, and yet the business was never commingled, never funded with joint assets, and was managed independently. This isn't community property. This is careful planning. Mark finally lost composure. She's trying to destroy me. She froze everything. I don't even have money for rent. Mr. Harrison, the judge said firmly, you are responsible for that situation. You initiated the separation by draining the account. You then used marital resources to finance a trip with a third party. You escalated the situation. Your wife responded with legal recourse. But she's freezing my accounts, he snapped. No, the judge said. I am. She paused for effect, then continued. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct. All shared accounts will remain frozen pending full dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return all misappropriated funds within 24 hours. But that money's gone, he mumbled. We spent it. Then I suggest you figure out a way to return it, the judge snapped, because the court will not shoulder your irresponsibility. As the judge moved on to the business claims, Mark tried again. Half of that boutique should be mine. I was her partner. My lawyer didn't even look up from her file. text messages, Your Honor, referring to the boutique as a little shop, just a hobby, and a waste of her time. She handed them to the bailiff. Not exactly how one describes a business they co-own. The judge flipped through them with a raised brow. This court sees no evidence of shared ownership or contribution from Mr. Harrison. The boutique remains sole property of Mrs. Harrison. The house deed shows sole ownership pre-marriage. As such, it too remains hers. Mark deflated. It was like watching a balloon lose air in slow motion. The man who'd swaggered in now slouched in his chair, his fantasy of a clean, victorious break fading into cold legal reality. Outside the courthouse, I passed Melissa in the hallway. She glanced up, then quickly looked away. Mark followed a few minutes later, storming out behind me. "You've ruined me," he hissed. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." I turned, met his eyes without flinching. "No, Mark, you ruined yourself. I just made sure you couldn't ruin me too." His mother was waiting by the curb, arms crossed, expression tight. She opened the passenger door wordlessly. As he climbed in, I heard her voice rise. "Honestly, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old stealing from your own wife? Those texts, do you know how humiliating this is? I didn't stick around for the rest." My heels echoed confidently across the courthouse steps as I walked back to my car. Not as a woman abandoned, not as a woman destroyed, but as a woman who had prepared, endured, and quietly won. And while Mark retreated to his childhood bedroom, I returned to the business he never believed in, the one that would soon define the rest of my life. It didn't take long for the fallout to spread. 3 days after the hearing, Amanda Mark's sister walked into my boutique. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked uneasy, like someone preparing to confess. "I know we didn't believe you at first," she said gently, fingering a silk scarf from the new spring collection. "But after the hearing, after seeing what he said, what he wrote, I'm ashamed we took his side. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He told us you were controlling," she continued, voice lowering, "that you sabotaged him. But then I saw the texts, saw how he gloated about stealing your money. That wasn't the brother I grew up with." I gave her a small smile. "He didn't become someone else, Amanda. He just stopped hiding it." As Amanda left with the scarf she hadn't planned to buy, I glanced at the front window. The boutique was buzzing. More customers than usual. Some came for the clothes, but others came for the story. Rumors had spread. A woman in town had flipped the script, outmaneuvered a cheating husband, protected her assets, and came out on top. I never confirmed anything, never spoke about the divorce, but that silence only added fuel to the fire. "You're an inspiration," one woman whispered while trying on a statement coat. "My ex tried to take everything in our divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them." She left with the coat and a matching handbag. Even the local business journal reached out wanting to do a feature not about the divorce, but about the strategy, the growth, the way I'd scaled a boutique into a growing brand while navigating personal chaos. Meanwhile, Mark was floundering. The promotion he'd been banking on gone. HR had launched an investigation into his relationship with Melissa, the subordinate. Turns out the company wasn't thrilled about the optics of their office romance, especially after his ex-wife filed court documents detailing the affair. He tried to claim age discrimination when the role went to someone else. Amanda told me, smirking. He said they punished him for dating someone younger. HR apparently just added that complaint to his file. Melissa, on the other hand, had gone quiet. Her social media posts dried up. No more cocktails. No more beach selfies. The grand escape had turned into a Motel 6 detour and awkward silences. Through mutual friends, I heard they were fighting. Mark had assumed her small studio apartment was temporary, that she'd eventually move with him into a luxury place. She assumed he had money, stability, a plan. Instead, she got a grown man pacing her living room, muttering about court documents and how everyone was out to get him. It didn't last long. She left. Moved back in with a roommate, started posting about toxic relationships and being careful who you trust. One post simply read, Not all midlife crises come with a warning label. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the smirk she gave me at that Christmas party, the one where she draped herself over Mark's arm and laughed just a little too loudly. Maybe she didn't deserve everything that followed, but she'd played her part in the performance. Mark's desperation only deepened. He filed a petition to challenge the divorce settlement again, claimed it was unfair, that he'd been misled, that I'd hidden money. My lawyer called laughing. The judge dismissed it in under 5 minutes, she said. He actually tried to argue that the ha-ha in his text proved it was a joke, not theft. She paused. Also, he's been gambling online. His mother called me. I raised an eyebrow. Called you. She wanted to know if you'd consider waiving some of the financial penalties. Said he's under stress. I leaned back in my office chair and looked across the boutique floor. The display windows sparkled with curated elegance. My staff helped customers with ease and warmth. No, I said, absolutely not. Mark had already taken too much. Instead of repairing his life, he was chasing shortcuts, a pyramid scheme 1 month, crypto the next. He'd become the kind of man who believed luck owed him a comeback. But life doesn't reward entitlement. It rewards preparation. I'd moved on. The boutique had expanded. I'd opened a second location in Houston, and plans for a third in Dallas were underway. My staff had grown from 2 to 10. And for the first time, I felt what Mark had always feared: independence, not survival, thriving. His mother called again. This time she didn't ask for favors. I just wanted to say thank you, she said softly. You taught us something. About enabling, about ignoring red flags. We kept making excuses for him, but we're done now. We're not bailing him out again. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only honest thing I could. I hope he learns something from all this. So do I, she whispered, but I'm not holding my breath. That night I opened a bottle of wine, not to numb anything, just to celebrate, quietly, alone, with dignity. I poured a glass and glanced up at the framed text on my wall, the message that started it all. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Beneath it hung my latest business award, Best Small Business Growth Central Texas Region. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't messy. Sometimes it's a well-lit boutique on a busy street. Sometimes it's success delivered in silence. But the past wasn't done with me yet. One day, someone from that chapter walked back into my life. It was supposed to be a normal afternoon sun streaming through the boutique windows, soft jazz playing overhead, the scent of fresh peonies from the front display. I was restocking a shelf of limited edition sunglasses when the doorbell chimed. I turned expecting a regular. Instead, I saw her, Melissa. She looked different. Still young, yes, but not the radiant, smug girl from Mark's social media posts. She was thinner, paler. Her hair, once curled to perfection, hung limp against her shoulders. She clutched her purse tightly in front of her like a shield. "Hi," she said softly, almost like she wasn't sure she belonged there. "Hi," I replied just as softly. She hesitated at the doorway, then took a few tentative steps inside. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor. She glanced at the shelves, the displays, the quiet elegance of the boutique she once dismissed with a smirk. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. I didn't respond. I just waited. I believed everything he told me. She continued. That you were cold, controlling, that you didn't support his dreams. He made you sound like the villain. And then I asked. She looked down. Then I watched him try the same tactics on me, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the blame. When things didn't go perfectly, he started calling me controlling, said I didn't understand him, that I was stifling his potential. I nodded slowly. Those weren't dreams, Melissa. They were escapes. There's a difference. She gave a hollow laugh. I learned that fast. He told me moving into my apartment was temporary, that he'd have us living in a penthouse by the end of the year. But after 2 weeks of complaining about the closet space and asking if I could maybe take out a loan to help get us into a bigger place, I understood. She looked up. I understood you. I raised an eyebrow. took you long enough." She smiled sheepishly. "Yeah, it did." We stood there for a moment, surrounded by silence and the soft hum of the store's ambiance. It wasn't awkward. It was resolved. "I'm dating someone my own age now," she said. "We live in a tiny apartment. We've got student loans, mismatched plates, and a leaky faucet. But it's real. No delusions, no grand escapes. Just real." I gave her a small nod. "That's worth more than any penthouse built on lies." Melissa wandered toward a display of handbags. She touched the strap of a deep plum leather piece, tracing the stitching with her fingers. "You've built something beautiful here," she murmured. "And you did it without him." "I did it in spite of him," I corrected gently. She smiled again, then placed the bag back on the shelf and turned to leave. "Thank you," she said before walking out. As the door closed behind her, my assistant manager leaned in from behind the register. "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I said, glancing at the door one last time. That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did. Later that afternoon, I sat down with that same assistant, Sierra, sharp as a tack and hungry to grow, and we reviewed mock-ups for our new accessory line. She'd pitched the idea of a legacy collection inspired by resilience and designed by women who had rebuilt their lives. I loved it. The boutique had become more than a business. It was now a symbol, a sanctuary. Young entrepreneurs started coming to me for advice, women launching Etsy shops, designing jewelry from their kitchen tables, building candle brands in their garages. They asked how I protected my assets, how I kept my emotions from blinding my judgment, how I bounced back. I always said the same thing. The best protection is preparation, and trust your instincts even when love tells you not to. Mark, on the other hand, was still spiraling. My lawyer updated me once a month, mostly for entertainment value. He'd tried online gambling, a drop shipping business, selling fake investment courses through a shady coaching website. All failed. His mother called one final time, not to plead, not to scold, but to thank me. "You taught our family something important," she said, about the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. Apparently, even she had stopped defending him, said he still lived at home, still blamed everyone but himself, still talked about what he lost, never about what he'd thrown away. "That's your legacy to our family," she said. "You made us see clearly." I thought about that. Legacy. Not the kind that comes with wealth or inheritance, but the kind that quietly changes people. That shows others what's possible when you stop apologizing for being smart, cautious, and strong. Mark had wanted to reduce me to a sob story, a cautionary tale. Instead, I became something else. The woman who survived the storm, the woman who turned betrayal into fuel, and in the most ironic twist of all, Melissa, the girl he left me for, now shopped at my boutique. She even started her own company, a small social media consulting firm. One day she tagged us in a post with the caption, "Inspired by women who build, not break." Claire Harrison, boutique owner, businesswoman, divorcee. But more than that, a woman no longer underestimated. And the final chapter, that would be mine to write. 5 years ago, I stood behind the boutique counter with a phone in my hand and a message that should have broken me. "Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." 5 years later, that little shop had become a 5-location brand, spanning from Austin to Dallas to San Antonio. Each boutique uniquely designed, each staff carefully trained, and each window display a quiet testament to everything I had built by myself. The framed text still hung in my office, but now it sat beneath something else, a gold plaque from the National Small Business Association honoring excellence in entrepreneurial leadership. Success, it turns out, has a beautiful sense of irony. I was invited to speak at a women's business conference in downtown Austin. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal or revenge. It was resilience, asset protection, emotional clarity in business. During the Q&A session, a woman early 30s, newly married, stood up voice, hesitant but firm. "My husband says I'm being paranoid for keeping my business account separate," she said. "That if we're married, we should trust each other with everything." Am I wrong? I didn't blink. My ex-husband said the same thing, I replied, watching the nods ripple through the crowd, right up until he tried to take half of what he never helped build. Laughter followed, and something else relief, validation, that quiet exhale of women realizing they weren't alone in their caution. Afterward, a young woman approached me in the hallway. She looked barely 21, nervous, but inspired. "My mom went through something like you did," she said, "but she didn't fight back. You make it feel possible." I hugged her. Sometimes the only legacy we need is giving someone else permission to rise. Meanwhile, Mark had finally moved out of his parents' house. Word got around he'd taken a job at a small logistics firm, not managerial, not glamorous, just enough to cover rent in a tiny apartment above someone's garage. His dating profile, according to Amanda, still claimed he was young at heart and self-employed, despite no business license or income to prove it. Melissa, ironically, had become one of my most loyal customers. She never spoke about Mark again, but I caught glimpses of her growth. She earned her business degree, launched her social media agency, and frequently tagged our boutique in posts promoting women-led businesses. One day, she walked in with a client and whispered, "You inspired me. You showed me that women can build something lasting instead of chasing someone else's promises, and that was the kind of legacy I hadn't planned but was proud to own." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, we turned the store into an elegant soiree. Champagne flowed, string lights sparkled overhead. Old customers returned, new ones explored, and my entire staff celebrated a milestone none of us had imagined on that first difficult day. I stood up to give a speech. 5 years ago, I almost gave up on this place, I told the crowd. Not because I doubted the business, but because someone else did. Someone who thought my age, my ambition, and my independence were a liability. I looked at the framed text on the back wall. A few people gasped when they realized what it said. "Have fun with your little shop." I smiled. That little shop now employs 30 people, serves thousands of customers, and inspired hundreds more to start their own. The applause was thunderous. After the event, I noticed an uninvited guest standing quietly in the back. Barbara, Mark's mother. She was dressed in one of our boutique's signature navy wrap dresses, her hair elegantly pinned. "I saw Mark yesterday," she said quietly, joining me near the refreshment table. I said nothing, just waited. "He was talking about his glory days," she continued. "Said you stole everything from him. Still doesn't understand that he didn't lose it all. He threw it away." She smoothed her dress. "I just wanted to tell you, I'm proud of you for everything, for how you handled it, for how you grew through it." I nodded. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She hesitated. "He still talks about the boutique, about how it was his idea, how he helped inspire it." I gave a small, exhausted laugh. "He still wants to rewrite the story." "He can't," she said firmly. "You already published the truth. We parted ways after that. Her with her quiet regrets, me with my growing legacy." Later that evening, my assistant, yes, another Melissa coincidence of the century, approached with a question about our new inventory system. As we reviewed it, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the store window. A woman in her 40s, confident, grounded, smiling. Not a victim, not a scorned ex-wife, not a cautionary tale, but someone who had taken a knife meant to wound and carved a new life with it. I thought about all the women who'd walked through my doors, hurting, healing, rebuilding. I thought about the younger me who once feared everything would crumble if love disappeared. She had no idea that losing him would be the best thing that ever happened. And I thought about Mark, still chasing shortcuts, still rewriting history, still bitter that I turned his betrayal into my beginning. He wanted to destroy me. All he did was set me free. So if you're listening, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, replaced, just remember, you don't have to get even. You just have to get better. And believe me, success, it's the best revenge.